the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go. Finding life along the way, melodies we haven't played. No, I don't want no rest. Echoing around these walls, fighting to create a song. I don't wanna miss a beat. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go. And we'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon, turn us to thousands, and we'll grow.
All right. Hey everyone. Hope everyone had a great Tuesday. We're going to continue this road to DevNet Expert tonight with looking at the Python library called Flask. So to provide a little bit of background, Flask, it's basically it's a web framework, and it's used to build obviously web applications. So tonight we'll be building a very basic web app using Flask, and also which will obviously have a UI to it, but we'll also be building an API as well. So that's kind of the little bit of background about what we're doing today. Actually wanted to provide a little bit of an update. So I actually over the weekend was able to get my as you guys know, I run everything in EvenG, and I was actually able to get my entire Eve topology and everything off of Google Cloud. So, if you've tuned into my previous, back when we were developing my NetCheck project, we were using a topology in Google Cloud where I had a VPN set up and could interact with it there. I actually moved all of that in the labs, and I have EvenG Pro license, and I moved all of that from Google Cloud to my on-prem server that I recently got. So everything is now on-prem. We're not connected, no clouds, nothing, unless you want to consider this, 1U used Dell server below my desk as a cloud. So it was actually it was pretty painless. I had to convert the community edition to the pro edition, convert or remove my license. So there's a license file. So I actually had to turn down the Google Cloud and then apply that license to the on-prem server that's here at my house, and then it activated, and the rest is history. So it was pretty easy. So just wanted to provide that kind of little update that you won't be seeing any sort of, we won't be kind of visiting the Google Cloud as you've seen in the past. We're all set now, which is kind of nice. It's crazy enough. I had most of the infrastructure in, I want to say US East. I know that's AWS. But yeah, I had it mostly in in the Eastern region, and it was costing me like $25 a month, and I was only running it for the hour or two streams we had. I used it a little bit in my free time, but honestly not that much. So hey Julio, man, I'm glad you're here. I am glad you're here. Your recent CI/CD series, blog series was awesome. So Julio has a couple questions. Oh, actually just one question. Bare metal install or ESXi? Neither. So I'm actually using let me see if I can pull it up here. I'm actually using Proxmox. So let me just pull it over here. Yeah, so I'm using Proxmox. It's open source. Or I'm sorry, don't want to say open source. It's free. There's a community edition. It's very relative to ESXi, but it's it's community edition. It doesn't have. There is an enterprise edition, which I keep getting flagged to say, hey, it keeps saying, hey, you don't have proper licensing, but it comes by default with the enterprise repository configured. You just have to disable that. I just have to figure out how to do that. So yeah, so Proxmox. Yeah, so I read about it and I wasn't too sure because like if you look at EvenG's documentation, they specifically call it Proxmox. It's like a unofficially supported or just not supported hypervisor basically. So yeah, it was kind of like, oh, man. But luckily, I actually found a blog series to help me get started with getting EvenG up. So I got that up. And then, so on top of migrating everything from Google Cloud to this on-prem server, I actually got Ubuntu 2004 and the what I have here, DevNet Expert VM. So, in the list of requirements, we got let's see, let me just pull it up. So there's a list of software, and we've referenced this many times on stream, but it talks about the different virtual machines. So you'll see 2004s here, and then all the different virtual images, and it shows all the different software, all the software that's going to be installed on the candidate on the workstation. So obviously some of these I'm not going to install, like PyCharm, Atom, because I use VS Code, and I imagine the different IDEs are on here, just so for your preference. But since I'm using just Visual Studio Code, I got all these plugins installed. I don't have Google Chrome, but I'll probably just be using Firefox. I think I still have to get Docker, Terraform, and then like Wireshark, Postman. A couple of the applications. We're not doing that tonight on stream, but yeah, we're getting there. So I'll be emulating hopefully the entire DevNet Expert lab environment. Yeah, so Julio says you have to give us a review later on. Yeah, I think I will. Definitely no expert. I haven't even looked into the replication or backups or even really doing a snapshot. So, but once I dive into maybe doing a snapshot or two, I'll give kind of a full rundown. But it works, works for my little needs, my small requirements. So yeah, got everything off Google Cloud, and I got a VM stood up. We won't be using the VM tonight since we don't. All the software we're using essentially just VS Code. I have installed on just my Windows machine, so we'll just be looking at just the Windows machine tonight. So, yeah, we don't need that. So tonight, what we'll be doing, like I said, we're taking a look at Flask. So if we pull up the requirements txt file, so this is directly off that. It's funny, I just closed the tab. The software list. So these are all the libraries that are going to be installed and the versions in the DevNet Expert lab. So you'll see that Flask is on here, Flask 1.1.4. So Flask 2.x is out now, but yeah, we have Flask 1.1.4, and so we'll be looking at that documentation. Hey Eric, so yeah, seeing some familiar names. Yeah, I mean, we got a packed house. I honestly, I feel like, we're in like I know I'm the guest on your guys' show. Some of you guys got some famous people in here. And Eric, it's cool that you're here. I actually just finished the chapter in your Mastering Python networking book on creating the Flask application. So, yeah, very good chapter. I'm over halfway in that book, and awesome book. So, my idea with this is because I kind of want to have some sort of design, right? I'm not planning on building a full-blown application with a database and everything like that, because we only have hour and a half, maximum 2 hours streaming. So I wanted to build an application that has a very basic web interface that a network engineer could use, and then also an API. The problem with the API is, since I'm not going to have a database, it's going to be kind of tough to pull any sort of device data. So there's a good chance maybe I will kind of pivot and do like an SQLite database. So that way we do have some data that we can pull from. But let's see. All right, so let's get started. So I kind of cheated. Obviously, I want to make sure that the stream isn't a complete bust. So I created the scaffolding for this project. So all of this will be in the DevNet Expert repository on GitHub. So I created a new folder called Flask app. And then within that, I created the actual project folder. I'm just calling it net auto. Like I said, it's nothing crazy. And then I created 2 folders, one called API and one called web. So the API one is going to have the different versions of our API. So I'm actually kind of building it to where hopefully people can add on to it and potentially contribute back. You could contribute to this DevNet Expert repository, or feel free to fork the repository and kind of make it your own. So I'm trying to provide somewhat of a path, because I know my biggest issue whenever I first started with Flask, or kind of really I've been more focused with Fast API, is just understanding the scaffolding and like how the folders and files should be laid out. And there are plenty of tutorials and plenty of projects out there that say, hey, use this, use that. And so I'm starting, like I said, very basic. So I created a folder called API. You'll see init.py. There's nothing in there. You'll see this file around a lot, and that's essentially allowing this folder to be considered a module in Python's eyes. And so that's why you see these random, init files. But the one we're going to be concerned with is this v0.py. And basically what this allows us to do is we can create, as we iterate through our different API versions. So, if you've ever looked at APIs and how, the path to an API could be API/API/v0/v1. There's a good reason why they do that, is so that way they can grow the API and mature it, refactor it, but they can properly version it. And that's kind of what I'm doing here. I'm trying to do it in a way where we'll have our v0 API and all the endpoints within this one file, and then let's say we want to get to a version 1, then we'll create a new file called v1 and then change the URL prefix. Eric says, a bit surprised by the Flask version on the DevNet Expert list. Flask 2.0 is very different than 1.x. I agree. And I think this is total hypothesis with this, Eric. Flask 2.0 allowed for there is a dependency where it would need Jinja 3.0, or a minimum version 3.0. However, PyATS, up until I believe like just this month, October release, the newest release, and I haven't even checked that. PyATS required Jinja 2.x. So basically, they both depended on Jinja 2, and PyTS required 2.x, whereas Flask required 3.x or 3.0. So, and I only know that from personal experience. I've tried building, actually the NetCheck project. I started with Flask. So I did Flask, I used Flask in PyTS, and then quickly found out when I just was trying to create like the requirements text file, requirements TXT, I ran into an issue where there's a dependency conflict. So that's my only thought of why we're looking at 1.x versus 2.0 for Flask, because they have an older version of PyTS in here. Older as in like, only a few months, but it still has a hard, actually it's 9, I do know the 21.9, I believe it still required Jinja 2.x, so yeah. And let me just, see, and then Jinja 2 set at 2.11, whereas Flask 2.x, I believe, requires 3.0 or higher for Jinja, so. Anyways, but yeah, something good to point out, Eric. That was a good point. So, anyways, back to the API conversation. So, we'll get into what a blueprint is here in the stream, but just know that all the API endpoints will reside in this API folder. Weird. I thought for sure I had some other folders in here, but anyways, the web folder has exactly what you think. It has your static files, your Java, your JavaScript, CSS, your HTML. The templates folder, they're empty right now, the base and index.html. If you're unfamiliar with Jinja 2, and I just talked about it, to Eric's question. Jinja 2 basically is a templating engine or templating language where we could dynamically change values on an HTML form, using this templating, or insert values. For example, let's say we collect the version or the iOS version of a router, and we need that specific version to be displayed on the HTML page when we click on, let's say, the router's name in like a dropdown. Well, we could use Jinja 2 to dynamically, look that up and then present it. And that's kind of where, a database would fall into place. So there may be a good chance that we actually set up an SQLite database during this stream as well. But there's some other dependencies with that. So we'll like I said, we're starting small and we're kind of building up. And then, so all the web content will be stored in the web folder. And then the last file here, because these last two I'll quickly touch on, but the last file, app.py, this is going to be like our main entry point into the application. And so, we initialize the application here, the Flask app, and we register the blueprint. Like I said, we'll kind of go over that here in a minute. And then this is where our routing goes in for the web app, for the front end. And just to kind of give you an idea of what this looks like, we will spin it up real quick. All right, so you'll see that debug mode's on. This is just a development server built into Flask. So one of the very first, one of the things I got confused about with Flask when I first started looking at it was, how do I transform Flask, my app? Because obviously, these few lines of code, you'll see here, let me just pull it up real quick, that these lines of code actually make, hello world, right? This is an HTML form. So, how exactly, do we get this from here to production? There's a couple other, connection points. So, you need a proxy or something to front all your web requests, and then you also need to provide a web server interface. So WSGI, which you actually see here, use a production WSGI server. That's kind of the glue and the protocol that communicates between Nginx and Flask. So I'm not going to get into that tonight, but I just wanted to point out that there's some other tools and some other pieces of software that you need to introduce to get this up and running and actually something you could scale into production. So but you'll see here our development server is going to work great for what we're doing tonight. There's a log to say, hey, someone did a GET request to the your root, which is just this slash, and you'll see it just returns hello world, which go back here, you'll see hello world. So my initial plan was to build all of this on stream, but I thought I don't want to bore I don't want to bore anyone with the minute details, because honestly, if you go to Flask documentation, you'll see this, like, you could copy and paste this, right? A basic, initializing the app, creating a basic route, and then spinning it up and running the development server. So what I want to get into tonight is we're going to create a form to where we'll just do, maybe let's write this down so that way we're all on the same page. So let me go to this markdown. So I created a quick markdown. It's a README file, but it's just a markdown to explain like what's going on. So I just did a quick purpose. So let's do let's call it not development, use cases. So some of the use cases we're going to do is we'll have a static inventory, because like I said, I don't have I don't have a database, and if we get to that point, then it may take a little bit to get everything up and running. But let's say we have a static inventory and we're gonna run collect the we'll just call it collect the show version of each network device, or I'm sorry, of a network device in our inventory. So we'll stick with one use case because there's a lot to unpack right there, and then we'll go back and we'll create some more, because once we get some of the the scaffolding for this, then we'll be able to expand on it really quickly. Ganesh says, "Hey Dan, not streaming on Twitch anymore." No, it was my computer just doesn't have the resources to have a steady stream. I was having a lot of issues with the quality of the stream, so I've just chose to pick YouTube, since all of the streams are automatically recorded and available, so people can watch them on demand. Twitch didn't have that option, and also ultimately, like, more people were asking about YouTube, so just chose YouTube. So yeah, it stinks because I know there were some people on Twitch that had no idea about network automation that would come in and just say, hey, what's going on? What are we building? So it stinks, but hopefully, they'll find their way to YouTube and able to watch the stream. Okay, so we're collecting the show version of a network inventory and returning results to user. Boom. Okay, so this is a very basic example, and like I said, there's some heavy hitters in the chat. I mean, I got Eric, I know Eric, Julio, you guys, I'm sure that this example is probably very minute in your eyes, so I apologize, but The goal here is let's just create something that, combines this web app with network automation. So what we'll be doing is using Scraply under the hood to grab the show version information from a network device and then returning the results to the user in an HTML format. The API, there's a chance we can do that as well. The issue is because we don't have it stored in a database, we have to run this in memory, which kind of stinks. But I didn't really plan that. I didn't plan that far ahead. So, all right. So let's just get started. First, let's do. Let's create the utility function. So what we'll do is say utils.py. So what we'll do is create, I jump between these words, utility functions and helper functions, but essentially what these functions will do is perform a specific task, do it well, and return results, right? So think of like a random number generator. You just call on generate random number, and you might put in a range, say from 0 to 100, and it will spit out that random number, right? So instead of going through and saying, in range of 0 to 100, do math.random, blah, 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 we're just calling on one function. So, all right, so let's do, let's say, we're using Scraply, and I'm actually going to be cheating a little bit because in a previous stream, we had a little script here where it would go out and collect the show version. So what we're going to do is steal some of this code. So we're going to say go into... So, and I forgot to go over this config file. So I don't know if Clay Curtis, if he's in the stream today, but he actually submitted a pull request, which surprised me even. I asked for, I love contributions, but he actually found, so what I was doing in all my, in the streams and scripts was I was just hard coding like the host name, the password, username, and like they're just dummy username passwords. They're, Cisco123, like nothing sensitive, but I was doing it a lot. I was doing it in Scraply, Ansible. I haven't touched Nornir yet, but like there were different scripts here, and I would have everything hard coded. So he actually put in a pull request and said, well, why don't you just create a config file where you define an inventory dictionary and just pull all the information from one single source. It's very relative to like Nornir, or NetMiko. So I was like, duh, like. Of course. So what we'll do is we'll kind of use the same format. And I'm thinking what we could do is we could say get... so I'd like to get version, get device version. We'll call it get device version. The thing is, let's pass in a host name, and we'll call it a string, or it is a string, and it's going to return a string. Julio says like from config import inv or inv. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So yeah, you'll see here from config import inv. Yeah, literally just created a config.py file, put a variable called inv, and then created one big dictionary with all the hosts in it. So, and that's all it really is. Then we just pull the device that we are looking for out of inventory. So, yeah, it's super simple. I mean, it's nothing crazy. The keyboard sounds pretty. Well, I appreciate it. It's a Razer Ornata case you're curious. It's kind of like a mechanical, but with the clickiness, but it's not as like loud thumps, but I like it. All right, so what we'll do is we'll pass in a host name. And just for those that don't know, whenever I put like colon str and then the arrow str, these are called type hints. So, unlike Java, Python's like a loosely typed language. So you don't have to define, when you define a variable, so like for example, like here, we didn't define inventory was a string or a dictionary or anything like that. We just said, all right, we want to call this inventory equals, and then we just put whatever content we wanted. So what these type hints do is it kind of helps you define or expect what you're looking to get. So, in the arguments here, the parameter, we're expecting a string, and then we're going to be returning a string from this function. So this helps a lot too with your IDE. So a lot of IDEs will take these type hints and can help with debugging. They help with data validation. Pydantic is a really good Python library to help with all of this and do that checking for you. So Julio says, I ran something similar when playing with Pulumi to define infrastructure. Good stuff. Yeah. And actually, Julio, I haven't actually like messed with Pulumi, but I did go to their site and kind of read through their docs. It definitely something I want to look at. It's Pulumi. It's definitely not in the DevNet Expert. Terraform is, so I'll probably be diving more into Terraform, especially on stream, in the next few months. But Pulumi definitely looks sweet. I still got to check it out. I still owe you. Okay. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna say from config import inventory, and like I said, this is pulling from a static inventory. So if you were in practice, you could do this from you would connect to a database or some sort of source of truth that would have all your device inventory. Something like Netbox. So you could do like an API call or something like that. But in our case, we're just going to pull from inventory. So what we're going to do is, let's just do a try block, and we'll say inventory, or we'll call it device, equals inventory.get, and we'll try to just get the host name. And then what we'll do is, let me see, accept. And we'll just do a print. We'll just do a print statement and just say device not found. So, all right, so if we have our device, so basically what this does, and there's probably a better way to do it, but what it tries to do is it's going to within the inventory or the config.py file, it's going to try to pull down the host name. So if you pass in a host name like string, R1 or stream switch, stream SW, it's going to try to pull down this whole dictionary, right? If it doesn't find this key, then it's just gonna print device not found. So I don't have it raising an error or anything like that. It's because ultimately I know what I'm gonna be pulling, but anyways. So we're gonna get the device version, and then what we'll do is we will load in here. Let's see. So this is kind of where we're going to be. So we'll just call it my device. Actually, what we could do is pass in device. Oh, he creates the actual, yeah. Forgot, I gotta create. Sheesh. All right. Let me see. Here we go. All right. So, like a lot of copy paste, but let's be honest. If you can get it done with copy and paste, it's the way to go. All right. So I'm basically just copying what was in the script. And then let's just do result. Then I'm gonna have to also pass in this. Take in pretty print and here. See, I could have just taken all of this. All right. Probably could move this out of the try block, but okay. And we'll just say if, and I'll go over all this code real quick. I'm just trying to knock it out. Well, let me see if I can just, I can't, interesting. I was hoping I can just copy that, but. All right, so what we're doing now is basically we created this function. What it's going to do is try to pull the device from inventory from that config file, and then it's going to set up a it's going to create a dictionary that Scraply can use to then parse or connect to the device, send a command, and then we'll parse the output. And basically right now what we're doing, we're just printing the output. But what I'm going to do is make sure that the output's printed, and then we're going to add to it to make sure we can parse out just the OS version. Get iOS. And maybe we'll call it iOS version because obviously this is going to change, especially if we're using parsers. This is going to change depending on the operating system. And there we go, utils.py. Oh, get, oh, duh. Device not found. Hostname, string, hostname. Interesting. Let's try R1. Oh, that's kind of the issue with having, let's see. Move the try block way over here. Because basically what happened whenever I had the except at the bottom, if any of this failed, then yeah, dev is not defined. It's because I'm using the word device. I'm a dummy. All right, let's try that now. Oh, Clay is here. Hey, Clay. Yeah, line 7 should be dev. Yeah. Cool. I hope you were here towards the beginning of the stream. I was giving you some high praises for helping me out with this, creating a pull request and whatnot. So, like I said, I highly appreciate it. So it works. Pretty simple stuff. some of the, yeah, like I shouldn't have all caps here. So we'll just say, Scrapply dev. And we'll call it Scrapply dev. Because all caps basically is like a constant. And I always associate it with like a, you know, at the global scope. So I don't want to confuse people. Let me just make sure it still works. All right, cool. It still works. So basically what all this is doing now is it's a function that accepts a host name and it returns a string, which it doesn't return a string yet, but we're running show version on the device, and then we're parsing it out using a Genie parser. And so what we're looking for within here, this is kind of where like the parse data, now we got to find the exact data point we're looking for or that we want. So I'm just going to go into, I obviously got to go into version because that's the top level dictionary. And then let's just jump into, let's just get the version. So we'll just do version. And so we'll just say, we don't want to pretty print it anymore. We'll say iOS version, or we'll say parsed output. This will just be easier. You could do this in lesser lines. Parsed output. And so basically this parsed output variable captures all of this, this dictionary, this nested dictionary. And so now what we're going to do is say, okay, well, within the parsed output, let's grab version. So let's do version. And then now that we went into version, we're at this level. So now we can just reference any of these keys. And we're specifically looking for version again, ironically. All right, so let's just do, and you could put in some more fault tolerance here, like I did with the try and accept block up here. Like you probably should do a try and accept here, make sure that we can send the command, and then do a separate one for, parsing the output. But, I want to make some progress tonight. We can kind of clean up as we go, but so now we're going to say, we'll just assign this to a variable to make it simple. iOS version. Okay, so now the iOS version variable obviously is the parsed output, which is this version, and then we go in one more level to version. So we should be getting this return 15.6.1t. So let's just we'll do a print. That is the best debugger, we all know. We'll do a print. Let's run it again. That's it. All right, so we got it. So now instead of doing a print, we're going to do a return statement. Boom. And we'll just use for testing. PR is a lot more low effort than leading a streaming learning series. Yeah, I appreciate it, Clay. No, like I said, I can't thank you enough for, at least putting any effort behind it, right? So thank you. All right, so this block is only executed if we call on this Python file specifically, like we're doing down here, python utils.py. So I'm not going to comment it out. It's not a huge deal if we just keep it uncommented. But now we have this, now we got a function, and it's pretty neat because, yeah, we're limited to just that config file. So any inventory we have defined in here, we're kind of limited to. So like, unlike a database or a single source of truth that we can pull an entire inventory with, hundreds of devices, we're only limited to that one static inventory file. But either way, we have a function passing in a host name, and we get the iOS version returned to us. Now, there's a lot of assumptions being made here. One, we're running show version, and the parsed output follows basically the show version of an iOS device. So that's kind of why I also called it get iOS version, because it's assuming that you're passing in a hostname of an iOS device, because this parsed output is very particular and very strict. We're making sure, we're assuming that the dictionary looks like this, and we're grabbing the version number by parsing that dictionary. So let's see. Julio says, down the road, check out the Rich library by Will. From Rich, import print, inspect some variable. It's pretty. I mean, I'll just do it right here. Okay. So I actually no, I don't want to mess up my requirements. So I have looked at Rich, and I think it is an awesome library. I like using creating panels and tables using that library. It's so easy. Just putting in like the column names and the width, and then changing the colors in line by using what feels like HTML. It is very cool. I would use it here. It's just I have the requirements. The virtual environment I'm in is like an exact copy of what the DevNet Expert's going to have, and sadly, Rich is not included. Okay, so we got that figured out. Sweet. All right, so the whole reason we wanted to get this figured out was so that way when we plug in a host name, so my idea is, within a web page, you have a text file or a dropdown. Honestly, I might just do a dropdown because that can help control what the users can input, and also avoids typos and everything like that. So might just do a dropdown, and then you choose a device, and then a button will say get the version. Right? Pretty simple enough. And if you think about it, besides the database part, which, like I said, I'm sorry I did not plan that far ahead with the database, and plus, honestly, that might be something we do on the next stream, on Thursday's stream, because it's very interesting, and it's definitely something you will need to do in the future, especially as net DevOps, network automation engineer. So maybe we will take a look at it, specifically like SQLite, just to keep it simple. But we will have a web front end. The API, we may just wait till we get the database, because otherwise it's going to be silly, because it'll just be mostly static data. So we'll have a web front end. We'll have a we'll use a dropdown, and then they'll just have a button that says get the version. Simple enough. And then let's throw in like a Bootstrap theme or something like that, because obviously you got to make it look nice. So let's cancel this out. util.js. Util.py. .js. All right, let's do something cool. We got that figured out. I don't think we need that. Oh, before we jump too far into the design piece and getting like the web UI all configured, let's just quickly take a look at Flask itself. So, as I mentioned, on the DevNet Expert, we're going to be looking at 1.1.4. So down here in the bottom right, I just clicked on the different versions, and I just went to 1.1x. And so, as Eric mentioned kind of towards the beginning of the stream, 2.x or 2.0.x is definitely way different. There's some easier ways to do things in 2.0 versus this 1.1, but we'll do with what we have available. So let's just jump to quick start, and we're not going to go through, like I said, every piece, but kind of what I mentioned at the beginning of the stream. This is just some basic scaffolding to get it working. Boilerplate code. So you just you go to the root of your web page and you can return. This is just returning a string, which that's exactly what I'm doing in this case. But what we're planning to do, or what we're going to be doing, is actually overlaying it with some CSS and JavaScript to make it look nice. Mostly CSS. I don't think we'll be touching JavaScript tonight. And then introducing some forms and gathering data from forms. But you'll see here, there's different ways you can set up environmental variable for Flask app if you're using the Flask CLI, which in our case we're actually using app.run at the end of the Python file. So we're actually just initiating that, running the Flask app using Python and then app.py, versus you could use Flask run in the CLI to also run this app, but we're not doing that. Debug mode, don't care. All right, here we go, routing. So this is just saying you can create different routes and have basically put where the endpoint is. And when I say endpoint, I'm really talking about, for those that aren't familiar, I'm saying endpoint because with APIs, these are considered endpoints, right? This is a part of the URI. But /hello. So really, you could type in here, /hello. It would fail right now because we don't have a route available. But you can see here, it's pretty straightforward. You just define hello and returns a string. This is pretty interesting with variables. So this is where you're not sure what this value is going to be. So in this case, if you want to see a user profile, you could say /user/ and then the name of the user profile. But obviously the username is going to be chosen by the user. So you can't statically just, I guess you technically could, but it'd be thousands, maybe even millions of routes for every username possibility given certain restraints. But anyways, the dynamic value allows it just to be, it's almost like a parameter in a function, right? Kind of like what we just did with hostname. We're not sure what hostname the user wants, but we're going to have it passed in and then use it within the function. Don Thor 7, are you posting your code examples anywhere? Yes, good question. So I actually have them up on my GitHub, and I'll post a link to the repository. I always check them in, all the changes that I do after the streams, but I'm gonna post that in the chat now, so that way you have the link. Hopefully that posted. I think it posted. It should be in the chat now. Sorry, you guys are about 30 seconds behind, so that's why I'm kind of just waiting for it to. There it is. Okay, it popped up in the chat. But yeah, if you go there, I have it actually up here as well. I have a list in the folders and all the scripts and stuff here. So all of this will be updated after stream. So anything I'm doing today, you can go in, mess with it. Feel free. You can clone it down, play with it, fork, whatever you want to do. If you feel like you want to contribute as well, like if there's something, like I said, there's a lot of improvements that can be made. Since I'm doing this all on stream, I don't have everything kind of scripted out and already completed. Feel free to contribute. Submit a pull request. I'll definitely review it, and you'll be added to the list of contributors. So, but good question. All right. So variable rules. So this will be interesting once we build our inventory a little bit. We're not really going to mess with it tonight, but once we kind of have picture it from a network perspective, you could say, /devices /routers and then the host name, or you could just do /devices/ and then the host name of the device, and then maybe that function you could do anything from returning JSON response like you would maybe if we were interacting with the API, or we could put something in a nice HTML like a data table. So those familiar with John Capobianco, I've just did that co-stream series with him where we were adding the parser, the Genie parser I made for the Cisco Smart Licensing, adding it into his Merlin project. He does a really good job of putting all of the information into these data tables. And so that could be like something you do with, this sort of variable route is plugging in a host name and then returning a nice data table that could show like the version, the VTP version running for if you're running VTP. I mean, anything you want, you can grab from show, any of the show commands that can be parsed out, we can add into a table. So, okay. So URL building, we're kind of getting into, so here, HTTP methods. So this is a really neat, and this was actually something changed in 2.x. So instead of saying app.route, and then putting the methods that are available for a specific endpoint, so in this case, get or post, you actually can just directly reference the HTTP method using app.get, app.post, and then do the function for that specific. So that way, it eliminates a lot of this. So, traditionally you would say if request.method equals post, then do all this code. And then if else, do some other code. Or if request.method equals get, then return this. So it kind of was some extra code that's not needed. It's a little cleaner using, app.get, app.post. And like other web frameworks like Fast API, they have that already, in their version. So in their current version. All right, so this is actually where we're going to be, planning ourselves for the next half hour or so. So, dynamic web apps have static files, which are essentially your CSS, JavaScript files. And then there's also creating templates. So let's get this knocked out real quick. So we're creating a folder called static. So actually, I'm kind of messed up a little bit. Let's just call it static instead of web. It'll be easier. There are ways you can customize the location. But what I'm going to do is just follow, like I said, I'm going to try to stick as close as I can to some of the tutorial items, so that way if someone's reviewing this by themselves, they can say, oh, okay, you put it into a folder named static. Well, if I have a folder named web and then static's in that, may get confusing. So we'll put some CSS to generate URLs for static files. Use the special static endpoint name. Well. All right. So what I like doing is going and using CSS that already exists. So Bootstrap is my favorite, but I recently found Tailwind CSS, and I just need the hoping I can use it without download the static files. Installation. I don't really want to install it though, or integrate it. I just want to be able to reference it. Alright, maybe not. Alright, I'll make it even simpler. There's this site called Bootswatch, and it has free Bootstrap themes. And I know, download a CSS file and use in Bootstrap. So let's make ours I kind of like journal. So I've just so you guys know, I'm using Darkly for the NetCheck project I'm working on. So we won't use that, or Flatly, because that's basically the opposite of Darkly. Let's use Journal. Journal looks fun. I kind of don't like the font. Lumen looks nice, right? No, those buttons are weird. Minty? Sandstone. Okay, this is somewhat chill, right? Yeah, I mean, the nav bars are kind of boring, but it'll do. Okay. So we'll use Sandstone. Download. All right, so I got Bootstrap. Actually, let me just see Bootstrap and CSS. This is gonna seem crazy, but I'm just gonna add it. I'm just gonna copy it without downloading, because I'm running this in Bootstrap .min.css. Boom. Yeah. Julio says this is what Dan looks like when he's window shopping. Yeah. Yeah, this is my life, man. Okay. We're done there. All done. Now let's do base. All right, so we have the Bootstrap, and let's see. So that has all the CSS for this theme, right? And let me see. Yeah, Sandstone. So now we'll have access to all these different, the buttons, the nav bar. Eric, I need to bail. Good job. Looks like excellent Flask app in the making. Hey, thanks, Eric. Yeah, I'll definitely be posting a link after the stream, just so you can check it out on GitHub as well. So, but thanks for tuning in. Okay, so I have the CSS here, and we need to reference it in our templates. So before we move on, let's start taking a look at rendering templates. So I want to talk over the templates, and then I'll actually get into getting it up and running and applying the CSS, because I don't want to jump into applying the CSS and all the styling and whatnot before going over what a template is. So, all right. So the file has to be stored on the file system as style.css. Yeah, that's for the example. All right, we're pretty much done with the static files, by the way. We're not introducing any sort of JavaScript. It's all just kind of styling. So rendering templates. So we can use Jinja 2 templating to, like I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, to dynamically add or remove content from a web page based on input from the user, or based on some sort of output from our Python function, right? So they actually have Flask has a method called render template, and so you just provide the name of the template and the variables you want to pass into the template engine as keyword arguments. So this is kind of where you would pass in those values that you want to dynamically render on the page, right? And just to be clear, dynamically render, I'm talking about, you're providing this hello HTML, probably has a, oh, here it is. Perfect. This is what I was looking for. So you can see we're saying, if name, so if name is true, then hello, and then these double braces, curly braces signify a variable. So it'll say hello, and then whatever you put in as the name, and then else it'll just say hello world. So this is what I mean by kind of dynamic. It's not the same as something like JavaScript where you can, click a button or, adjust the value on the screen and then something else will pop up. JavaScript, that's where a little bit of JavaScript's required just because the code needs to be downloaded to the client side. Now there is some server side rendering. That's a possibility as well, but just not as popular. So this is rendered basically whenever the template is presented back to the user. So before the HTML page is sent to the user, all these keyword arguments are sent into the template, rendered, and then all these conditionals are basically completed, and then it's sent, and then the user sees whatever the rendered template is. So just wanted to clarify that. So we'll look in a templates folder, and so I have a templates folder. So I'm actually going to be doing something pretty I would say you can call it more advanced, but Jinja has this concept of inheritance. So basically you can build templates on one another, right? So you can have this base, like what I'm doing here is I have a base template, and then what I'm doing is base is obviously at the bottom, the foundation, and then I'm building like all my other HTML pages on top of base. So things that might be in a base would be like a navigation bar or a title to the web page. So what we will do, or actually I guess a better example would be like if you have the same if you're referencing the same CSS or JavaScript files all throughout your web page, then you're probably going to want to reference it here in base.html. So I'm actually going to cheat a little bit because I have it working in my NetCheck project. And let me find it here. Back end, nope, front end. Yeah. So I am just gonna cheat because that's what I do. I don't need the JavaScript. I don't need Ajax, but I will take those. All right. Let's get rid of that. We don't have any JavaScript file, so we'll get rid of that too. And we'll call this net auto Flask app. And I'll explain what's going on here in just a second. Net auto. And this actually, what we'll do, so this is the nav bar for Flask app. Okay. All right. So, and I purposely I deleted, I copied all the codes so that way it's a little simpler. So that way I'm not sitting here fumbling over syntax errors because I want to kind of go through this. So all of this is kind of like if you've ever done anything with HTML, you have your HTML tags and then, your head, which has a reference to all your JavaScript, CSS, any sort of styling or JavaScript files you're using, you would include in your head section for an HTML page. And then your body. And then obviously, your body has all the actual, the headers, paragraphs, all of that. So, Julio, you need to head out. All right, man. Hey, thank you. I really appreciate you joining tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Anyways, so, in the body, we're going to have, our headers and our paragraphs and kind of the content, if you will. So the only thing that's a little different, and this is where where Jinja 2 comes in, is this little section right here. So you'll see that we have what's called a block. So this is kind of like, and maybe this is, I'll do this just to make it look hopefully you can visualize it a little better. So in this block, just imagine, I put a blank line, but this is where your dynamic content comes from all your other pages. So, I talked about inheritance, and this is the base file. Well, the base file would have, like I said, your nav bar, all your references to your, CSS, JavaScript, anything that's used across the board. Otherwise, you'd have to reference your CSS, JavaScript in every single file, and that obviously that be repeating yourself, and can cause a management mayhem. Let's say, what if I didn't like the sandstone theme and I wanted to change it up? Could you imagine if I had like 10 different HTML files here? I'd have to go through and change it all, and then change every individual tag. It'd just be a mess. So yeah, I'm creating this base foundation of what every page will look like, and then what should dynamically change. So my idea is I'll create a nav bar across the top. It won't really work. I won't have every link filled out, or have a route to every link, but I will have it just kind of for show. And then we'll fill in the content. So if we go to Sandstone, I'll just get rid of that. If we go to Sandstone, and we'll just use this little nav bar here. And it's kind of neat because all your code is right here. And you don't need to set up, you don't have to have any knowledge of how to set up like a front end or anything like that. You literally can copy and paste. Now, if you copy and paste, obviously there's going to be some boilerplate code that you might not need, but let's just do a quick save and jump into what we got. I don't know what it's going to look like, so we'll find out. Well, I know why. Perfect example of jumping ahead of yourself. We're not even referencing that template. So we need to first bring it into, import it into the application. Oops. Let me see. So up here where it says, use the render template method, I haven't even created this route yet. So what we'll do is say, all right, well, we're going to render the template. So instead of return hello world, we're going to return the template, and we'll just say we're going to return base right now. This isn't going to be the final cut, but we'll just do base.html. We're not passing in any sort of keywords yet, so we'll just do render template. And on top of that, we do have, okay, Flask server is running. Oops, I keep doing that. Try now. Template not found. Base.html. Okay. Let's see. Render template base.html. This is where my net check project will help out. Oh, you want to know why? Because the templates folder doesn't need to be put under static. Here, I have an idea. So we'll call this one web. We'll stick with the web name. We'll put static under web. Static under web. There we go. Static. Wait. Static under web. And then we'll also put in, we'll move the templates out under web. Okay. So now what we're doing, it might seem confusing, but basically now our structure is we have a top folder named web, and then underneath the web we have static and then templates. So now we're gonna say it's under web. or hold on, web static. That may return an error. Let's go to, what was that error message again? Yeah. So, because now we have to say where it's at. And we need to get to, let's see, app. Oh, because this is in, this is Fast API. So it's render template. Let me jump to the docs real quick, because configures for you automatically. Yeah, so we just need a folder name template. So this is what I'll do instead. I'm gonna pull out templates, put it in the top level. So now it should automatically find templates. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want to waste too much time. Gonna build URL for endpoint static with values path. Okay. So I'm gonna pull this out too. Well, there goes some of what there we go. Let's see if this works. For path. Oh, it's because I broke that path. No. Base.html. Okay. Try this again. Static, CSS, Bootstrap, .min. Alright, let's do this. I just want to make sure if it's just that, I can statically set that. That's not a problem. Funny though, because it's commented out. All right. Let's just slow down and figure this out. So we have static. Where'd it go? Static files. During Flask, just create a folder called static in your package or next to your module where it will be available as static. File name style.css. I don't know if path will work though, that's the thing. Oh, you know what? It won't. I think I have to do it like that. And then try that. Type error. The view function did not return a valid response. I'm just going to eliminate anything that can cause errors, and I will fix it later. Interesting. Oh, you know what? That might be render template. Name equals iOS. Okay. Now I'm just rushing it. The view function don't return value. The function either returned none or ended without a return statement. Oh man, you can tell it's that sort of day, right? I didn't have the return. Let me try this again. Boom. There we go. Sorry about that. Took me like way too long. All right, so a few things here. Now let me try to add this back because I want to get this within its file. I don't want. Also, I don't need an init file in that folder actually. Let's just do path. All right, hopefully this will work. Let's see. Cannot build static with path. Okay, maybe file name. If this doesn't work, what I'll do is I'll just keep the Bootstrap out. Oh, no, it does work. It was just the wrong. This, I know why. Because I was using Fast API previously, and they had just a slightly different language. But all right, now we're in business. Check that out. Now we're in business. Like I said, none of these links will work. These are just directly off of the Bootstrap site. But what I will do is I'll delete the ones that don't work. I'll delete the search bar. Like I'll delete everything except the nav bar, which I think this just calls home, yeah. Oh yeah, it's a brand. We'll just call it Net Auto or Net Auto Flask. Or just Net Auto, screw it. So a couple things to note though. All right, so home, this will just reference slash features. So you can see here, you know, and this is kind of going into HTML and stuff, and I know I don't normally dive too deep into it, but you'll see it's pretty straightforward. You know, where li is a list, and each of these are nav items. Obviously, the about page will keep this drop down. So if we go back here, you'll see there's a drop down menu. Seems like it doesn't want to work right now. Either way, we're getting rid of it, so not a huge deal. So I'll get rid of the drop down. I'll keep the about page, and then what we'll do is have one called show version. I'll be just very explicit. And then get rid of the search bar because we don't need the search bar. Yeah. Boom. All right. So let's check out what it looks like now. Boom. All right. Check it out. Check it out. We're making progress. Let's go. All right. So you can see it highlights over home, show version. Actually, I don't really like that Net Auto thing. I'm trying to keep it minimalistic for everyone. Let's just do F5. Boom. All right. So we have a button, home, show version, and about. Okay. And then obviously our title. And so the home page, I don't know what to do with yet. show version is the page that we're going to use to collect the show version of a network device given a host name. Okay, so let's work on this page. We have to create a template, and then we have to create a route to the page. So right now if I'm clicking on it, right, nothing. Same thing with about, nothing. So we'll create templates, and then we have to create routes to tell Flask how to get to it, and then we'll pin it all together by plugging in that get iOS version utility function that we created, and then we'll be about done. Okay. So all right. So we have every page will have this navigation bar. And so we have this block content here. So basically what this is where the dynamic content of other pages will go. And to show you what I mean, let's just do index. Let's go. Like I said, I'm going to cheat again. We'll just use index, and we'll say block content. All right, so, and I'll get rid of all this stuff. All right. So this page obviously is called base.html. So within Jinja 2, there's a extends function, and what this does is basically it takes all the code that's on base.html and brings it over to index.html, and that's kind of where the extensibility comes in. Hence the word extends. But also, if we needed to change an item on that nav bar, instead of doing it across 5-10 different templates, we do it in base.html, and it gets updated across all of our templates. So very, very neat and efficient way of doing things. And then you'll notice the block content again, right? So if you go to base.html, you see, block content, and now index block content. This is the home page. We'll just do, and actually we'll put it in the p tag, just to say we're official front-end developers now. All right, so we just put in paragraph tag, and that's all we're putting in the content, right? So let's say this is index, we have it done. Actually, let's do h2. We're gonna throw it in some header tags, so that way you can really read it. Now let's go back here, and we're gonna render. So since our home page is that slash, right? So if we go back to home page here, the slash, instead of rendering base, we'll render index. And what that does is now it will take this template, and this should be our home page now, okay? And it should still have all the content of base, but it will also include anything that's defined in content, which you see here in the content block. We have this h2 tag. So now we go to here, we say boom, home page, done, right? We click on home, it takes us to the same location, so the home link does work. Now we got to do the show version, okay? And so let's just do a copy of this and paste, and we'll just do show version. Sorry, I was reading. Eric says, do you believe the DevNet Expert would use Flask for front-end and back-end, or only back-end development? What are your opinions on how Flask would be used on the DevNet Expert lab? Really good question. I actually kind of thought about this myself when I was prepping for this stream. I'm thinking it definitely will be used for the back-end. I think it will be used to create an API. But I think there could also be a front-end aspect to it. I don't think it will be that heavy on the front-end stuff because, like you see here, a lot of the things I'm doing, it's fun to do on stream because it's, it's visually appealing. But I would say it's probably going to be more creating backend and creating like an API. So that way it can be used by other applications. And my thought is, because there's a 3-hour design section, that you'll create possibly multiple APIs that will then interact with one another and create kind of this more like ecosystem. So yeah, to answer your question, I would say probably mostly backend, which, like I said, I think I'm going to cover that on Thursday. I'm going to prep and get like a database set up, a very basic database, and we'll actually go through creating an API on Thursday. But yeah, we'll finish covering the front end today. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so we need to do show version. So let's do. So what do we need on our page? What did we say? We definitely need a button, and let me just grab this button here. Code for this button. And so we'll just say get version, and then we'll plug in a input. It's input. Well, I know it's input, but let me get the text. Email, example, correct value. Oh, here we go, default input. All right. Sorry, I'm just blazing through this. Basically, on this site, you can just click on this little blue icon, and you have to read through, but all the examples, the code is right here. And that's all I'm doing. I'm just grabbing the code. Because, like I said, this is more, I want to more focus on using Flask versus, web development. So, but, it's part of it. Some of the front end stuff is web development. So, all right. Let's say host name. I did say I wanted to control, let's just do that. I did say I wanted to control the dropdown, or the host name using a dropdown. Example select. Example select. All right. So we're gonna use a select here. We're just gonna say option R1 stream switch. Okay. Host name. Host name. Select host. Okay. Collects software version. Okay. So basically what I did here was created a drop-down menu and then a button. So let's see if that works. And actually, before I even check that, I need to create a route. So if I go to app.py, and the route will be, we'll just call it show version. And we'll create the function. They don't have to match, by the way. The route and the function don't have to match the names. But I like to do that just to kind of keep everything standardized. And then what do we want? What template is it? It's show-version.html. So now, if we go to show, I'll just kind of show you. There's one more thing we have to do. So if I click on show version, it's not going to work because this button doesn't have I still have to program this button to point to show version. But if we go to the route show version at the top here, boom. And this needs cleaned up a little bit because this drop down's literally the size of the window. Yeah, let me fix this real quick. But you see here, there's a select host and there's a drop down with each host name and then the get version button. Yeah, let me hold on. Let me see. Let's do padding 4. I think we can do. I think this helps set the size. I think. Maybe not. No. Oh, here we go. Now I'm just getting into I did not want this stream to be about Bootstrap, but all right. Form group. Oh. I know a little bit of Bootstrap. Okay, that's obviously not going to work. Oh, I have an idea. Let me just slap on a row. Say this is the row, new row. These rows, this is particular to Bootstrap, so just in case you want to know. Let's see, hopefully, let's see if it jacks anything up. No. All right, so it's just a little bit of styling. I'll fix that after the stream, but you get the idea, right? We have a drop down. It's going to have our inventory. This is static, but we could integrate it with some sort of, source of truth or inventory system. So we choose that, we choose the value, and then we'll click on get version. When we click on get version, my plan is it will go out to the device, grab the OS version, and then return it to our page, right? So let's do that. Like I said, I will fix this. I'll just put a break in between. Yeah, give that drop down some breathing room. All right, so what's next? So we have the options. I think. Let me make sure to grab the value from a drop down. Grab value, drop down, option value, HTML. There's I'm pretty sure, yeah, there's a value option. Yeah, value. Okay, so this is kind of where, this is actually super important. Hold on. Equals R1. Stream switch. So this value attribute I just added is super important. So basically what this does is so Flask will, whenever we click on get version, the button, it will collect any values that were submitted in the form. And you can see here, well, let me create a form actual. Let's see. That row thing definitely needs to be changed, but yeah, so within the form, you have these values. And for this case, like if you had a text box, right, you would take whatever string the user typed in, and that would be the value. It would be a string value that would then pass into, you pass into a Python function, you could pass into anything on the back end, right? So, but in our case, we're passing just a host name, which then the value, whatever we select in the dropdown, will get passed to this utility function to get the iOS version, and it will be the host name. So, all right, we have that. We have the button. So let me see. Form ID will be called show version. Name equals show version. And so the reason I have a form is so that way when we click on submit, it will submit the form, which will essentially be a post request. And we need to identify what the form ID is in order to do that post request. All right, so we'll do a methods equals post, and I think this needs to be there. And we'll say not show version. We'll say get version. And we'll call this one let's call it version. Or no, we'll call this one, yeah, or get version. All right. So what will we do? How do we get, so where we're at now is, we can get rid of the index page. We have a form that you select a host name, right? This is what's in white is what is presented to the user. The value is what will be passed to the backend, right? And so we have to make sure that when we click the submit button or the get version button, that value gets passed to the backend and then processed. So we will be using a, I think it's called request.form. Let me look it up. Flask. Oh, since we have the documentation right here. Accessing request data. Perfect. It's literally like next one down. So in Flask is using the request object. So what we'll do here is say, here we go, request.form, and then we plug in this is the ID of the field that we're looking for the value. So let me pull up request.form. I think we have to, import requests. So we have to add requests to our imports, and then we'll say, okay, well, I feel like these are backwards. Let me just say Let's call it version. Okay. And all right, so we have to first gather some data. So we'll call this one hostname, and we'll say request.form. And the form value we're looking to get is actually called hostname. Okay, and so this is specific for dropdowns. So for the select statement, whatever the ID is of this, because obviously we can't use the value of the options, so we have to say, okay, whatever the user selects within this options, these lists of options, we want that value. And this obviously would be the value for these specific options. So we're going to look for hostname. So we're going to grab from the form, we're going to grab the hostname value, and we're literally just going to call it hostname. Okay. Hopefully that doesn't get confusing. This is a Python variable, and then this hostname is actually the ID from the HTML form. Okay. So let's say we chose R1. Then the value of this hostname variable would equal the string R1. And then what we would do is we would have to import this. We have to import this get iOS version into utils import get iOS version. So that get iOS version we created earlier, we have to bring into here, because after we have the host name that we get from the form, we have to pass that host name into the function, right? So now we're passing in host name and device version. Device version. So now we say, okay, well, we're running this function. We pass in the host name that we got from the form, right? And then we're running this get iOS version. And if you remember, we're returning the parsed iOS version. So in this case, I think it was like 15.6 or something like that, right? It's a string value. So what we're doing here is saying, okay, well, after we run this function, it's going to be assigned to this variable called device_version. So we need to pass that into the template, the new template. Because what will happen is when we click submit, it'll sit there and spin and spin and spin. And while it spins, it's doing this in the background. It's going out to the device, grabbing the show version information, and then grabbing the iOS version from that block of content, from that data. So what do we want our template to look like? So let's just do this. We'll say we'll call it version. Actually, to make it easier, I'm realizing show version results. That's what we'll call it. Get version results. So I just got to make sure show version results, and then show version results. Okay. So just so everyone knows, I changed the HTML name to be like a little more it's easier to understand. So you submit the host name that you want the version and the show version HTML page, right, using the dropdown, and then the show version results will actually be like, hey, these are the results. So let's get rid of all this, and all we'll do is of host name we'll call it version. All right, so let's see what else. So this show version results basically will say, okay, well, we're going to show software version of, and then remember these double curly braces signifies a variable. And in this case, we'll pass in the host name that we chose, and then colon. Actually, I want to do something cooler, little arrow. And then it'll basically say the software version of this host name, whatever it is, the little arrow. This doesn't signify anything, by the way. This is literally just like, take it literally. It's nothing with programming. And then there's another double curly brace signifying another variable, which is the version that we calculate or that we get from the device, right? So now let's take a look. All right, so we're grabbing the host name. We are calculating or gathering the device data, or I'm sorry, the software version from the device in real time. And then we're returning the template. Now the issue is, unlike these other templates, we actually have dynamic data we want to put in, right? If you see here, we need a host name and a version. So if we go over to here, remember the docs say pass in keyword arguments for all of the variables. So the host name will equal host name. Actually, to keep it, not to provide any more confusion, I'm going to actually just call it host. So that way, whenever you're reading this, you're not like, okay, what's what? The keyword what's in orange is is the name of the variable that's in the template. Okay. And we'll call this host version. Instead of device version, we'll call it host version. Okay. So basically, these orange values are what's in the template, host name and version, and then these variables are what's gathered from the form, and then what's gathered from the actual network device. All right. Let's try to run this. Let's see what we got. Oh, one last thing. Let's get remember the nav bar I mentioned wasn't working. So we're going to say show version is going to connect to show version, the HTML template, and then this one, we'll just call it about. Actually, I'm just getting rid of it. There's no point in having it. And actually, it's missing a tag, I think. Yeah, it is. Okay. So now if we do this again, we refresh the page. Okay. So now we only have the home and the show version. We click on show version. Oh, and it brings up the collect. Okay. So now we're on the home page. And then we click on show version. It goes to show version, the HTML template. We select the host. And if everything works out, we'll see the magic happen. And what I'm going to do is I'll click get version. And then I'm quickly going to move. Actually, I'll just move it over now. And at the bottom here, we should see the device or Scraply going out to the device, connecting, running show version, and then parsing out the iOS version that we from the device. So we click on get version. Oh shoot, sorry, man. I got so hyped right there, and got you guys so hyped for. So we didn't. The one thing we didn't do is connect the button to the form, and I know I can do that. Let's see here. Oh, here's the Bootstrap stuff too. Let me just fix it all real quick. Div class PB4. For those curious, PB4 is padding bottom 4, which basically just provides like a little space. All right, so we have the form there. We have this. You guys are probably tired of seeing HTML code and learning about it. Okay, so I had the div class. All right, type submit, ID is circuit submit. Here we go. And we do action. This is what I'm missing. Don't think, yeah. So basically now when we click submit, the form will do a post method. I forgot. I actually had to. You have to include this along with the route. So now when oh wait, it should do actually show version results. I think I have it like that. Let's try it. Get version. No, it didn't work. Let's see. All right. We're almost there. I promise. Oh, does this button have to be within the form? We'll just pop it into the form just in case. Version submit. We'll call it get version. Yeah, I don't think I needed this, but you never know. Like I said, I'm definitely a noob when it comes to the HTML. So we'll refresh. Oh, geez. Changed around my flipping button. Okay. Let's see. Boom. All right. Send a request that could not be understood. Key error hostname. All right. Well, the button worked. However, it could not find the keyword hostname. Get version results. I wonder why I couldn't find that. Form ID. Maybe I gotta do a name? I thought for sure it looked for the ID, but maybe not. Let's try it out. Show version. Boom. Okay, so far so good. Boom. All right. There we have it, guys. There we have it. Just like that. Just like that. Awesome. Okay, so for those that have stuck it out with me, thank you. I highly appreciate it. I know it's not fun watching troubleshooting, but hey, it's part of the journey. So, few things here. Few things. If you go, remember our template, we said, okay, we're going to grab the software version of, and then this is a dynamic value that's grabbed from the form. And then this little arrow, I guess you could call it. And then this is what So this value behind the scenes, it takes in, so we created that get iOS version utility function. What it does is it takes in a host name, pulls that host name from a static inventory file, and then Scrapply goes out, runs show version against it, parses out just the version from the structured output, that we get from Genie, and then it's presented to us here in the web form. Isn't that awesome? We went from 0 to hero within right about 2 hours. We're at the 2 hour mark. So, awesome. I'm happy it worked. I'm gonna change this little arrow. Like, I don't think it's not working for me. So let me change this real quick and actually learn something. So it does look for the name whenever it's gathering the data. So actually, let's do a colon. All right, so we'll do that again. And this time we'll do it for the other switch. Or the other device, I'm sorry. And like I said, I'll fix this. I'll fix the formatting. I'm going to switch this button back. I don't know why it's green. Actually, I know why it's green, but I'll change it back. And then this drop down, I'll get this all buttoned up for us and before I put the code on GitHub. So we'll choose stream switch. We'll click on get version. You'll see down here. Isn't that insane how quickly that is? So, I mean, I just described what it went through, but we're literally saying we're putting down, all we're doing is giving the host name of the device, right? And it goes and hands off the credentials. All of that is in the background in that static file. It's passed over to Scrapply, and Scrapply runs the show version command on the device, comes back, parses out just the version, like the specific version that we're looking for out of all that structured output, and then presents it on a web page. And based on the calculation, I mean, you're talking less than 10-15 seconds. That's insane. So that's it though. That is it for my demo and for kind of building this Flask app from scratch, essentially. I guess if anyone has any questions, put them in the chat, please, and I can go over them. Like I said, if anyone's still here, greatly appreciate it. I know we're right around the 2 hour mark. This was fun. This is definitely fun, but we'll build on this. So that way we're not jumping to a new subject. On Thursday, let's plan on building out a database and storing some of this data in a database, which then in turn we can create an API. And as Eric mentioned, Eric T, he mentioned that, do we think Flask is going to be used as front end and back end, or only back end during the DevNet Expert lab? And I have a feeling it's mostly going to be back end work, so I don't want to ignore the API of this. So we'll continue this journey on Thursday for sure. But yeah, I'll like I said, I'll fix this up, make it look a little nicer, and then I'll post on Twitter. Obviously, I'll link this VOD, and then I'll also provide the GitHub link. And you guys feel free, like I said, feel free to download it, mess with it. If you feel inclined to contribute, open up a pull request, and your name will be on the list of contributors for this DevNet Expert repository. So cool. I'm just going to do it one more time while we're on stream. That's insane. I mean, really, that is insane. That like the speed, you know. I know from a practical standpoint, you know, you have to be able to scale this, especially in an enterprise with hundreds, thousands of network devices. There's definitely this thing couldn't scale to that, given the way we have it built right now. But hey, give me a list of 10 devices and I got you. This is definitely a good prototype, and it's definitely we can make it scalable. But I think it's good enough for a 2-hour stream. Pretty proud of it. So, all right. Well, if that's all, if there's no question, I don't see any questions in the chat. Mark Hayes says, "Well done." Hey, Mark, I appreciate you being here. Thanks for sticking with me throughout this stream, and yeah, we'll look to expand on this on Thursday. So I will. I'll tweet out a reminder Thursday, but definitely come tune in on Thursday. We'll expand on this a little bit. So, all right. Well, if you have any questions, of course, you can hit me up on Twitter at DevNetDan. And I guess if I don't talk to you on the interwebs, I will see you on Thursday. See ya.
Hold me close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever try.